here! She's underwater!
Someone's screaming in the water! Help! Ah!
Dispatch, I have a possible drowning. Female in the water. Visibility is almost 0. Requesting rescue. Turkeyfoot Lake, Lom Drive.
Help me!
Right there! She's going under!
The 911 call came in at 1:47 a.m. A woman's voice, panicked, desperate. Neighbors near Turkeyfoot Lake in New Franklin, Ohio, had heard screaming piercing the foggy night. Someone was in the water in February when the lake was covered in ice. Officer Dan Kulksar heard the dispatch crackle through his radio. Water rescue. Turkeyfoot Lake. Foggy conditions. Possible person through the ice. He activated his lights and siren, his body cam turning on automatically. Everything from this moment forward would be recorded. The drive, the rescue, the life or death decisions made in freezing water at 2 a.m. What Kulksar didn't know was that he was about to save a 63-year-old woman who'd been trapped in ice-cold water, suffering from severe hypothermia, minutes from death. He didn't know he'd have to paddle a neighbor's canoe 50 feet into a freezing lake in the middle of the night. He didn't know he'd spend nearly 10 terrifying minutes holding a dying woman's hand, keeping her conscious, refusing to let her slip under the ice. "I'm not going to let you go, okay?" Those words, captured on Bodycam, would make Officer Kulksar a hero. But in that moment, as he raced toward Turkeyfoot Lake in complete darkness, fog so thick he could barely see the road, he was just a cop responding to a call that would test everything he knew about courage, quick thinking, and refusing to give up even when the odds seemed impossible. Before we dive deeper into this absolutely shocking story, I need you to do something. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. Your country, your state, wherever you are. And if you believe in holding authority figures accountable when they abuse their power, hit that subscribe button. February 27th, 2025, 1:47 a.m. New Franklin, Ohio. The temperature was 28 degrees. Fog hung thick over Turkeyfoot Lake, reducing visibility to almost 0. Most people were asleep, warm in their beds. Then the screaming started. Neighbors along Lom Drive, a quiet residential street bordering the lake, heard it first. A woman's voice, desperate, terrified, coming from the direction of the water. "Help! Please! Someone help me!" Multiple neighbors called 911 simultaneously. The dispatcher logged the calls. Person in distress, Turkeyfoot Lake, screaming from the water, foggy conditions making visual confirmation difficult. Officer Dan Kulksar was patrolling 3 miles away when the call came through. All units, water rescue needed at Turkeyfoot Lake, area of Lom Drive. Multiple callers reporting screaming from the lake. Foggy conditions. Unknown how many subjects in the water. Kulksar's pulse quickened. Water rescue in February meant someone had gone through ice. Ice rescues were among the most dangerous calls an officer could respond to. The cold incapacitated victims within minutes. Hypothermia set in fast. And rescuers who went into the water risked the same fate. Dispatch! This is Unit 14. I'm responding. ETA 3 minutes. Kulksar pushes patrol car faster, lights cutting through the fog, siren wailing. 3 minutes could mean the difference between life and death in water this cold. But when Kulksar arrived at Turkeyfoot Lake, what he found would be even worse than he imagined. Kulksar pulled up to Lom Drive at 1:50 a.m. The fog was so thick he could barely see 20 feet ahead. He grabbed his flashlight and ran toward the lake, his body cam recording everything. Other officers were arriving. Officer Ethan Towle was already at the shoreline, his flashlight scanning the water. "Where is she?" Kulksar shouted. "Out there." Towle pointed into the fog. "About 50 feet from shore. I can hear her, but I can't see her clearly." Kulksar aimed his flashlight at the water. The beam cut through the fog, and he saw her, a woman, about 50 feet from shore, struggling in the water, surrounded by broken ice. She was moving, but barely. "Keep your light on her." Kulksar instructed Towle. "Don't move. Don't let us lose sight of her." The woman's voice was weak now, fading. "Help, please, help." Kulksar assessed the situation quickly. The The woman was in an area of the lake about 10 feet deep. The ice around her had broken, creating a hole maybe 15 feet wide. She was clinging to the edge of the ice, but her grip was weakening. Her movements were sluggish. Hypothermia setting in. Fire and rescue were en route, but 5 minutes out. She didn't have 5 minutes. Maybe not even 2. Kulksar looked around desperately. They needed a way to reach her. A boat, a raft, something. Then he saw it, and what he did next would shock everyone watching the Bodycam footage. There! Kulksar pointed at a house near the shore. In the yard, barely visible through the fog, was a canoe. Without asking permission, without hesitation, Kulksar ran to the yard and grabbed the canoe. It was old, wooden, probably hadn't been used in years. But it would float. That was all that mattered. Towel helped him carry it to the water's edge. Kulksar, you sure about this? Towel asked. The concern in his voice was clear. Going out on a canoe in February in fog, to reach someone 50 feet from shore in freezing water, it was incredibly dangerous. She's dying, Kulksar said simply. Someone has to get to her now. He pushed the canoe into the water and climbed in. The canoe wobbled dangerously. Kulksar wasn't an experienced canoe paddler. The water was frigid. The fog made it hard to see. But the woman was out there, and she was running out of time. Keep that light on her. Kulksar called to Towel. I need to see where I'm going. Kulksar began paddling, half pushing against chunks of ice. The canoe moved slowly through the freezing water, the fog swirling around him. The woman's voice was weaker now. Please, I'm so cold. Please, I'm coming. Kulksar shouted. Stay with me. I'm almost there. 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet. The canoe glided closer. Kulksar could see her clearly now. A woman in her 60s, fully dressed, soaking wet, her face pale, her lips blue, hypothermia ravaging her body. But when Kulksar reached her and tried to pull her into the canoe, he discovered a problem that would turn this rescue into a 10-minute fight for survival. Kulksar positioned the canoe next to the woman. She was barely conscious, her movements weak, her speech slurred from hypothermia. Give me your hand. Kulksar urged her. Reach out and grab my hand. The woman tried. Her hand came up, shaking violently, and grasped Kulksar's. Her skin was ice cold, the color of death. Okay, I'm going to pull you into the canoe, Kulksar said. On 3. 1, 2, 3. He pulled. The woman tried to help, but hypothermia had robbed her of strength and coordination. She couldn't lift herself. Her waterlogged clothes weighed her down, and the canoe, unstable in the best conditions, threatened to tip with every movement. Kulksar pulled harder. The canoe tilted dangerously. Water sloshed over the side. Come on, Kulksar muttered, straining, but it wasn't working. The woman was dead weight. The canoe was too unstable. If he pulled any harder, they'd both end up in the water. The Bodycam captured his voice, frustrated but determined. I can't get her into the boat. From the shore, Towel called out. Kulksar, fire and rescue are 2 minutes out. Can you wait? Kulksar looked at the woman. Her eyes were starting to close. Her grip on his hand was weakening. 2 minutes might as well be an hour. She was dying right now. He made a decision. I'm staying with her, Kulksar said. What Officer Kulksar did next, holding a dying woman's hand in freezing water for nearly 10 minutes, would define what heroism really means. Officer Kulksar couldn't get the woman into the canoe, but he could do something else. He could stay with her. He could keep her conscious. He could prevent her from slipping under the ice and drowning. He positioned the canoe right next to her and grabbed both her hands firmly. I'm not going to let you go, okay? His voice was calm, reassuring, captured clearly on the Bodycam. I've got you. You're going to be fine. Just stay with me. The woman's eyes fluttered. She was fading. Hypothermia was shutting her body down, stealing consciousness, pulling her toward death. Ma'am, I need you to stay awake, Kulksar said, his voice more urgent. Look at me. Keep your eyes open. Talk to me. So cold. She whispered. I know. I know you're cold, but you have to fight it. Keep moving. Can you move your legs? The woman tried. Small movements. Anything to generate heat, to keep blood flowing, to fight off the hypothermia that was killing her. That's it, Kulksar encouraged. Keep moving. You're doing a good job. 1 minute passed. 2 minutes. The fog swirled around them. Kulksar's hands were going numb from the cold, but he didn't let go. He couldn't let go. From shore, Officer Towel kept his flashlight trained on them, providing the only light in the fog-covered darkness. Fire's almost here, Towel shouted. Just keep moving, ma'am, okay? Kulksar said to the woman, you gotta keep moving. Help is almost here. But the woman was losing consciousness, and Kulksar was about to face the most terrifying moment of the rescue. 5 minutes had passed since Kulksar reached the woman. 5 minutes holding her hands in freezing water, keeping her head above the surface, refusing to let her slip away. The woman's eyes closed. No, 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 Kulksar said urgently. Ma'am, open your eyes. Look at me. Stay with me. Her eyes opened slightly, unfocused. That's it. Keep those eyes open. Talk to me. What's your name? The woman mumbled something incoherent. You're doing great. Kulksar lied. She wasn't doing great. She was dying. But he needed her to keep fighting. Just a little longer. Can you hear the sirens? That's the fire department. They're almost here. Indeed, in the distance, sirens wailed. Red lights flashed through the fog. Help was coming. But would it arrive in time? Keep moving your legs, Kulksar instructed. I know it's hard. I know you're tired. But you have to keep moving. The woman's face was gray now. Her lips were dark blue. Her breathing was shallow. Classic signs of severe hypothermia. Her core body temperature had dropped dangerously low. Much longer in this water, and her heart would stop. Come on, Kulksar muttered, partly to the woman, partly to himself. Stay with me. Don't you dare give up on me now. 7 minutes. 8 minutes. Kulksar's own body was starting to feel the cold. His hands were numb. His clothes were wet from the water splashing over the canoe. But he held on. Then, through the fog, Kulksar saw lights. Figures in cold water suits. The fire department had arrived. But the rescue was far from over. New Franklin Fire Department firefighters arrived wearing specialized cold water rescue suits. They carried a Stokes basket, a rigid stretcher designed for water rescues, and ropes. Fire Chief Steve Leslie assessed the situation quickly. A woman 50 feet from shore, severe hypothermia, an officer in a canoe holding her hands, keeping her from going under. Kulksar, we're coming out to you. Leslie shouted. 2 firefighters entered the water, the cold water suits protecting them from the freezing temperatures. They pulled the Stokes basket behind them, moving carefully through the broken ice. It took them 2 minutes to reach Kulksar and the woman, 2 minutes that felt like hours. We've got her, one firefighter said, moving into position. You can let go. Kulksar released the woman's hands. His fingers were so cold and stiff he could barely move them, but he'd done it. He'd held her for nearly 10 minutes. He'd kept her alive. The firefighters carefully maneuvered the woman into the Stokes basket, securing her with straps. Then they began pulling her towards shore, the basket gliding across the water and broken ice. Kulksar will pull you in two, another firefighter said, grabbing the canoe. The firefighters pulled both Kulksar and the canoe back to shore. When the canoe touched land, Kulksar climbed out, his legs shaky, his hands numb, but relieved. On shore, paramedics were already working on the woman. They had her out of the basket, wrapped in warming blankets, checking her vitals. What the paramedics found would shock everyone. The woman was moments from death, and Officer Kulksar's decision to stay with her had literally saved her life. The paramedics' initial assessment was grim. The woman's core body temperature was 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Normal is 98.6. Anything below 95 is hypothermia. Below 90 is severe hypothermia. At 86 degrees, the woman's organs were shutting down. Her heart was slowing. Her brain function was impaired. We need to get her to the hospital now, the lead paramedic said urgently. She's in critical condition. They loaded her into the ambulance, still wrapped in warming blankets, for lines running, monitors beeping. The ambulance sped away, sirens wailing, racing to Suma Akron City Hospital. Fire Chief Steve Leslie walked over to Officer Kulksar, who was standing by his patrol car, still soaking wet, shivering from the cold. "You saved her life," Leslie said simply. I couldn't let her drown," Kulksar said. "You did more than that. You kept her conscious. You kept her fighting. If you hadn't stayed with her, she would have slipped under the ice and drowned before we arrived. She owes your life." Kulksar nodded, processing what had happened. He'd been a police officer long enough to know that not every call ends well. Water rescues especially had high mortality rates. But tonight, he'd made a difference. "What happened?" Kulksar asked. "How did she end up in the lake?" Officer Towell had been investigating while the rescue was happening. "Looks like a car went through the ice. The driver got confused, drove onto the lake. They were out there for a while before the ice gave way." "Where's the driver?" "On shore. She got out before the car sank completely. She's the one who called for help. We think she was drunk. We're going to charge her." Kulksar shook his head. A drunk driver had nearly killed her passenger, and now that passenger was fighting for her life in an ambulance. But the story was far from over, because what happened at the hospital would reveal just how close the woman had come to death. Suma Akron City Hospital emergency room physicians went to work immediately. The 63-year-old woman, they'd identified her now, though her name wasn't released publicly, was in severe hypothermia with potential cardiac complications. They started aggressive rewarming protocols. Warm 4 fluids, heated blankets, warm humidified oxygen. Slowly, carefully, raising her core body temperature without shocking her system. Her heart was beating, but irregularly. Hypothermia causes dangerous heart rhythms. If they warmed her too quickly, her heart could stop. For 3 hours, the medical team fought to save her life, monitoring every vital sign, adjusting treatment, watching for complications. At 5:30 a.m., her core temperature reached 92 degrees, still hypothermic, but out of the critical danger zone. Her heart rhythm stabilized. Her brain function started returning. At 7 a.m., she opened her eyes. "You're in the hospital," a nurse told her gently. "You're safe. You fell through the ice at Tickyfoot Lake. Do you remember?" The woman's eyes filled with tears. "The officer in the canoe, he held my hand." "He saved your life," the nurse said. "He stayed with you until the fire department arrived. You're alive because of him." The woman would spend 3 more days in the hospital recovering, but doctors confirmed she would make a full recovery. No brain damage, no permanent injury. Against all odds, she'd survived. Fire Chief Leslie later told reporters, "She was so hypothermic that it would not have been very much longer, and I don't know that we would be telling the same story that we're telling right now." Officer Kulksar's decision to stay with her, to hold her hand for 10 minutes in freezing water, had been the difference between life and death. While the woman recovered in the hospital, New Franklin police investigated how she'd ended up in the lake in the first place. The driver of the car, a woman in her late 50s, told officers she'd been driving to the parking lot near Tickyfoot Lake when she got confused. Instead of staying on the pavement, she'd driven onto the frozen lake surface. The ice had supported the car's weight for a while. The driver had actually driven across part of the lake before realizing her mistake. But then the ice cracked, gave way. The car started sinking. The driver managed to escape through her door and scramble onto the ice. But the passenger, the 63-year-old woman, had been trapped. By the time she got out, she was already in the water, the ice around the car breaking apart. The driver had screamed for help, then run to shore to call 911. Officers noted that the driver smelled of alcohol. Her speech was slurred. Her movements were uncoordinated. She failed a field sobriety test. Blood tests later confirmed her blood alcohol content was 0.12, well above Ohio's legal limit of 0.08. The driver was charged with operating a vehicle while intoxicated and reckless endangerment. Her drunk driving had nearly killed her passenger. But the public attention wasn't on the drunk driver. It was on Officer Kulksar and his incredible rescue. On March 3rd, 2025, New Franklin Police Department released the bodycam footage from Officer Kulksar's rescue. The video showed everything. Kulksar arriving at the lake, grabbing the canoe, paddling out into the fog, reaching the woman, trying unsuccessfully to pull her into the canoe, then holding her hands for 10 minutes while waiting for the fire department. The audio was powerful. Kulksar's calm voice reassuring the dying woman. "I'm not going to let you go, okay? Just keep moving, ma'am. You're doing a good job." The video went viral immediately. Within 24 hours, it had been viewed over 1 million times. Within 3 days, over 5 million. News outlets across the country picked up the story. Ohio officer saves woman from icy lake using neighbor's canoe. Dramatic bodycam shows officer's 10-minute fight to save drowning woman. "I got you." Police officer's heroic rescue caught on camera. The comments sections flooded with praise. This is what police officers should be celebrated for. Pure heroism. He stayed with her for 10 minutes in freezing water. That's incredible. The way he kept talking to her, keeping her conscious, refusing to let her slip away. That's a real hero. Fire Chief Steve Leslie was interviewed by multiple news stations. Officer Kulksar's actions were extraordinary. He showed incredible initiative and courage. That woman is alive today because he refused to give up on her. But Kulksar himself was uncomfortable with all the attention, because to him, what he'd done wasn't heroic. It was just his job. When reporters contacted Officer Kulksar for interviews, he was reluctant. He didn't like the spotlight. He didn't want to be called a hero. He just responded to a call and done what needed to be done, but the police department encouraged him to speak publicly. It was good for the department's image. It showed police in a positive light. It demonstrated the courage and dedication of law enforcement. Kulksar agreed to one interview with a local news station. "Officer Kulksar, you're being called a hero for your actions that night. How does that make you feel?" Honestly, a little embarrassed, Kulksar said, "I was just doing my job. Any officer would have done the same thing. But you risked your own life. You went out on a canoe in February, in fog, in freezing water. That's extraordinary. The woman was dying. Someone had to help her. I happened to be there. When you couldn't get her into the canoe, why did you decide to stay with her instead of coming back to shore to wait for the fire department?" "Because she wouldn't have lasted that long. She was losing consciousness. If I'd left her alone, she would have slipped under the ice and drowned. I couldn't let that happen." "Were you afraid?" Kulksar thought about the question. "Yes, it was dangerous. The canoe was unstable. The water was freezing. But I was more afraid of what would happen if I didn't do something. The woman you saved is recovering in the hospital. Have you spoken with her?" "Not yet, but I'm glad she's okay. That's all that matters." The interview was brief, humble, focused on the rescue rather than personal glory. It made people admire Kulksar even more. 2 weeks after the rescue, Officer Kulksar received a phone call from the hospital. The woman he'd saved wanted to meet him. She'd been released from the hospital and was recovering at home, but she wanted to thank him in person. Kulksar drove to her house on a Saturday afternoon. When she answered the door, she looked completely different from the dying woman he'd pulled from the ice. Color in her face, warmth in her eyes. Alive. "Officer Kulksar," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Thank you. Thank you for saving my life." She hugged him, and Kulksar, uncomfortable with emotional displays, awkwardly hugged her back. "I'm just glad you're okay," he said. They sat in her living room, and she told him what she remembered from that night. "I remember being so cold, colder than I've ever been in my life. I remember thinking I was going to die. Then I saw your flashlight. I heard your voice. You told me you weren't going to let me go." She started crying. "I was ready to give up. I was so tired, so cold. I just wanted to close my eyes and let go. But you kept talking to me. You kept telling me to stay awake. You held my hands, and you wouldn't let me go. You saved me." "The fire department saved you," Kulksar said. "No, you saved me. The fire department got me out of the water, but you kept me alive until they got there. Without you, I wouldn't have made it. She showed him photos of her grandchildren. I get to see them grow up because of you. I get to be at their birthdays, their graduations, their weddings, all because you didn't give up on me. Kulksar left her house feeling something he hadn't felt during all the media attention and public praise. He felt the weight of what he'd done, not the glory, the responsibility, the reality that his actions on one foggy February night had given a woman decades more life with her family. That realization would change how Kulksar viewed his job forever. In April 2025, New Franklin Police Department held a ceremony to honor Officer Kulksar. The city council attended. Fire Chief Steve Leslie attended. The woman Kulksar had saved attended with her family. Police Chief Sean Dennis presented Kulksar with the department's Medal of Valor, the highest honor given to officers for exceptional courage in the line of duty. Officer Dan Kulksar responded to one of the most dangerous calls a police officer can face. Chief Dennis said, a water rescue in freezing conditions with minimal visibility. Despite the extreme danger, Officer Kulksar did not hesitate. He grabbed a canoe and paddled 50 feet into a frozen lake to reach a dying woman. When he couldn't pull her into the canoe, he made the decision to stay with her. For nearly 10 minutes, in freezing water, Officer Kulksar held this woman's hands and kept her conscious until the fire department arrived. His quick thinking, courage, and refusal to give up saved her life. This is heroism in its purest form. Officer Kulksar, you represent the best of what it means to serve and protect. The room erupted in applause. Kulksar stood to receive his medal, his face red with embarrassment but also pride. The woman he'd saved stood up too. She walked in front of the room and hugged him again, whispering, thank you. Every day I'm alive is because of you. But for Kulksar, the real reward came a month later, when he responded to another call that would test everything he'd learned. May 2025. Officer Kulksar was patrolling when dispatch sent out a call. Possible drowning at Nemasila Reservoir. Fishermen reported seeing someone go under. All units respond. Kulksar was closest. He activated his lights and siren, memories of Tikifoot Lake flooding back. He arrived at the reservoir and saw a group of fishermen pointing at the water. He went under about a minute ago. We haven't seen him come up. Kulksar grabbed a life preserver from his trunk, equipment all New Franklin officers now carried after his February rescue, and ran to the water's edge. He saw ripples about 30 feet from shore. Someone was under there. Without hesitation, Kulksar tied the life preserver rope around his waist and entered the water. It was May now, warmer than February, but still cold. He swam toward where the person had gone under, dove down, searched by feel in the murky water, found an arm, grabbed it, pulled. The person was a teenage boy who'd been swimming and gotten caught in underwater vegetation. Kulksar pulled him free, got him to the surface, swam back to shore. The boy was conscious, coughing, frightened but alive. Paramedics arrived and checked him out. Aside from being cold and scared, he was fine. As Kulksar filled out his report later, he realized something. He hadn't hesitated, hadn't second-guessed, hadn't been paralyzed by fear. The Tikifoot Lake rescue had taught him that he could handle water emergencies, that he could make life-or-death decisions under pressure, that he could save lives. And that lesson would inspire him to do something that would impact officers across Ohio. After saving 2 people from water in 3 months, Officer Kulksar had an idea. He approached Chief Dennis with a proposal. Chief, I think we need better water rescue training for all our officers. What do you mean? Before the Foot Lake, I'd never responded to a water rescue. I had basic training, but nothing specific. I made it up as I went along. Grabbed a canoe, held her hands, hoped I was doing the right thing. You saved her life. I'd say you did the right thing. But I was lucky. What if the canoe had tipped? What if I'd fallen in? What if I hadn't been able to keep her conscious? We need actual protocols, equipment, training scenarios. Chief Dennis listened. Kulksar was right. New Franklin had Tikifoot Lake, Nemasila Reservoir, and several ponds within city limits. Water emergencies happened. Officers needed to be prepared. Over the next 6 months, Chief Dennis worked with Kulksar and the fire department to develop a comprehensive water rescue training program for new Franklin officers. The program included basic water safety and swimming skills assessment, ice rescue techniques and equipment use, how to approach drowning victims safely, when to enter water versus when to wait for specialized rescue teams, hypothermia recognition and first aid, equipment familiarization, life preservers, ropes, rescue poles. Kulksar shared his experiences from both rescues, teaching other officers what had worked, what hadn't, what decisions had saved lives. The training program became a model that other Ohio police departments requested to replicate. But the impact of Kulksar's rescue went far beyond police training. The incident at Tickyfoot Lake sparked a public safety campaign about ice safety. Too many people underestimated how dangerous frozen lakes could be. Too many people died every year falling through ice. New Franklin Fire Department, with Kulksar's support, launched an educational initiative. They visited schools, community centers, and public events with a simple message: no ice is 100% safe. Chief Steve Leslie explained, "People think if ice looks solid, it's safe to walk on. But ice thickness varies across a lake. What's 6 inches thick in one spot might be 2 inches thick 10 feet away. And in spring, when temperatures rise during the day and fall at night, ice becomes unpredictable." The campaign included safety tips. Never go onto frozen lakes or ponds alone. Ice should be at least 4 inches thick for walking, 8 to 12 inches for vehicles. Wear a life jacket when on ice. Carry ice picks or rope to help pull yourself out if you fall through. If you do fall through, don't panic. Control your breathing, get horizontal, kick your feet, pull yourself onto the ice. If someone else falls through, don't run onto the ice to help. Call 911 and throw them a rope or branch. Kulksar appeared in a public service announcement video, standing at Tickyfoot Lake explaining, "This lake almost claimed a woman's life. She survived because neighbors heard her screams and called for help quickly. But not everyone is that lucky. Please be safe around ice. It's not worth the risk." The campaign saved lives. And it all started because one officer refused to give up on a dying woman in freezing water. February 27th, 2026. Exactly 1 year after the Tickyfoot Lake rescue, Officer Kulksar was invited to speak at a regional law enforcement conference about his experience. He stood before 200 officers and firefighters and told the story. The fog, the screaming, the canoe, the 10 minutes holding a dying woman's hands. "I want you to understand something," Kulksar said. "I'm not special. I'm not some superhero. I'm a regular cop who responded to a call and did what needed to be done. But here's what I learned that night. Sometimes the right thing to do is also the scary thing to do. Going out on that canoe was terrifying. Staying in freezing water for 10 minutes was miserable. But a woman was dying, and I couldn't just stand on shore and watch." Every one of you will face moments like that in your career. Moments where the safe choice and the right choice aren't the same thing. Moments where doing your job means putting yourself at risk. And you'll have to decide, do I play it safe or do I do what that person needs me to do? I chose to do what she needed. And because I made that choice, a 63-year-old woman got to see another year, got to hug her grandchildren, got to live. That's what we sign up for. Not the glory, not the medals, not the viral videos. We signed up to help people on their worst days, to risk ourselves for strangers, to be the person who shows up when everyone else runs away. So the next time you face a call that scares you, remember, someone's life might depend on you being brave enough to act anyway. The room was silent when he finished. Then everyone stood and applauded. After the conference, Kulksar visited the woman he'd saved one more time. Officer Kulksar drove to the woman's house one Saturday afternoon. She was having a family gathering, grandchildren running around the yard, the smell of barbecue in the air, laughter and life everywhere. She saw him pull up and walked over. Smiling, "Officer Kulksar, I'm so glad you came. I wanted to check on you, make sure you're doing okay." "I'm more than okay. I'm alive, and I never forget why." She led him into the backyard. "Everyone, this is Officer Kulksar. He's the reason I'm here today." The family gathered around, thanking him, shaking his hand, showing him pictures and telling him stories. The woman's grandchildren, ranging from 5 to 15, looked at Kulksar with awe. "You're a hero," one of them said. Kulksar smiled. "I'm a police officer, and your grandmother is very brave. She fought hard to stay alive that night." Later, as the sun was setting and the party was winding down, the woman walked Kulksar back to his car. "I think about that night a lot," she said. "How cold it was, how scared I was, how I was ready to give up. And then I heard your voice. 'I'm not going to let you go.' Those words saved my life." "I meant them," Kulksar said simply. "I know you did, and I'll never forget them. Every day I wake up, I remember that someone cared enough not to let go, even when it would have been easier to leave me, even when it was dangerous to stay. You didn't let go." She hugged him one more time. "Thank you for everything." Kulksar drove home that evening thinking about the journey. 1 year ago, he'd responded to a call at a frozen lake. He'd grabbed a neighbor's canoe, paddled into the fog, and held a dying woman's hands for 10 minutes. It hadn't been the most dramatic rescue. He hadn't pulled off some impossible feat of strength. He'd just been there. He'd held on. He'd refused to give up. And that had been enough. Officer Dan Kulksar still patrols New Franklin, Ohio. He still responds to calls, handles emergencies, serves his community. The Medal of Valor sits on a shelf at home, but he doesn't think about it much. What he thinks about is the woman at Tickyfoot Lake, the teenage boy at Nemasila Reservoir, the lives he was able to save simply by showing up and refusing to quit. On February 27th, 2025, in foggy darkness at 2 a.m., Officer Kulksar made a choice. He could have waited for the fire department, could have stayed safe on shore, could have let someone else take the risk. Instead, he grabbed a canoe, paddled into freezing water, and held a dying woman's hand for 10 minutes while telling her, "I'm not going to let you go." That's not just a police officer doing his job. That's humanity at its best. That's what heroism looks like when you strip away the Hollywood drama. It's one person refusing to abandon another person in their darkest moment. It's simple. It's powerful. It's beautiful. And somewhere in Ohio, a 64-year-old woman is living, laughing, and loving her family because one officer meant those words with everything he had. "I'm not going to let you go." He didn't. And that made all the difference.